What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 166 of Nintendo Noise, Slip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Max Wright.
Bing, bing, wahoo, Pete.
Welcome back, buddy. It's been a minute since you've been on the show.
It has. My service is never required, so I don't often come on.
You know, you should come on more often. That's patently not true.
Oh.
I'd love to hear you gab about Metroid. You know.
That's true. Yeah, when things happen, you know.
Yeah. That's the
Something
struggle.
did happen. Something did happen with Metroid. The book. That book.
Yeah, you got that book coming out. That looks really cool.
The first piece of genuinely decent Metroid merch, other than the Figmas. They did loads of Figmas and Amiibos and stuff, but something different, you know.
Yeah, very tangible.
An actual good, thick, hardcover book full of 250 pages or whatever it is, 220 pages, all about the making of Metroid Prime trilogy. Wow, fantastic! I'm there day one. Cannot wait. Can I review a book? Is that something that we do?
Yeah,
on the
you
channel?
could do that. Do it. Buy it, and
Cool.
we'll put up a review. I'm sure people would be interested.
Hope so.
And if not, at least I am. So do it. I want to see.
That's all you need.
So let's jump into it today, because we've got a couple interesting stories. This first one is a new rumor that is coming from Fama boards. It's making the way around Reddit, and basically there is a leaker, right, who a few weeks ago put a sketch out of what the console was supposed to be looking like. Now they're back to offer this other bit of news, or alleged news, right, that Nintendo is planning to ship 2.5 times the number of Nintendo Switch 2s as they did the original Nintendo Switch. And I think this is one of those rumors where, whether or not you put any degree of stock in the rumor, I am more interested in the conversation around it, because we know that Nintendo, or I guess what we believe we know is that Nintendo had planned to release the Nintendo Switch 2, whatever that will ultimately be called, a bit earlier, right? And that it's been held so that they can have a larger stock at launch. They can have a better, lineup of games ready to go, to have a nice, consistent amount of high offerings to lure people over and keep that continuity between audiences, right? So that's why I was so interested in bringing this one to the table, more so than I'm interested in discussing the veracity of the information. I'm more do you think this number sounds right to you? Mm-hmm. That's the conversation I'm more interested in having with you, Max. So you hear that number 2.5 times, that's putting about 7 million units shipped, right? Would be the goal there, I guess. How does that number hit you?
Well, I remember the Switch launch. Sorry, like an old man. I remember I was there. I remember the Switch launch.
Back in my day.
Back when this was all fields. It was... It was, it was hard to get one. It wasn't easy. I was there at launch. I had a friend who would call me, and he was like, "I've just got off work. I'm trying to find one. I've tried here, and here. I'm going." And he eventually was able to get one. But, you could pay over the odds, or you had to wait. It was never as bad as the PS5, if I remember rightly, but they were tough to get hold of.
I think depending on where you lived, it was rougher maybe in some areas than others, but it was definitely, there was a time where if you didn't get it at launch and then you got swept up in the fever, you were struggling to find it. Mm-hmm. I had many friends that were in a chat doing that exact same exercise that you're describing.
And it's easier now because there are you can join a Telegram channel, for example, and they'll be it's in stock here, and you click it, and that's how I was able to get my PS5 at launch. The thing with that Switch launch is, there was a lot of hype, there was a lot of excitement around it. Tears of the Kingdom was the big game, but it was also coming off of the Wii U. There was a lot of, naysayers. There was a lot of hesitance. There were a lot of people who thought, this is going to be a flop. This isn't going to capture the market. This is too weird, blah, blah, blah. All the things that they were saying about the Switch before launch. And, the fact that it was still selling out, says a lot about how much they were able to capture that market. But now we live in a 7 years later, post-Switch world, where the Switch is the third best-selling gaming system of all time. And there is a fury of people who want the Switch, or the people who want a Switch 2 because they're done with the existing Switch, or they feel like their existing Switch isn't powerful enough to support these new games. Or you have the people that have never bought the Switch because they're like, they'll release the Pro, they'll release the Pro, they'll release the Pro, and that's kept them going for 7 years. That this is going to get them right. And if you can come in with like a strong lineup to quash all those fears, and you say, here's the games that were on the Switch originally that are now up-res, they do this. It's up-res, it's a higher frame rate, it's consistent,
whatever that special sauce.
Yeah, but also, the third-party games that you want to play on the go, and that this does this now because of DLSS. We can upscale them, and these games look and run really well, much better than they did before. You then capture a different market as well. You capture the handheld market that isn't into PC handhelds so much. Or you capture people that have had a Switch at one point, maybe got rid of it, or there's
or
just
I
so
think to your
much more
point,
to
like
offer.
if you're one of the people like us who's been on the train since the beginning, or maybe you jumped in even a couple years ago, and like you've played all the big games, and now you're kind of like, well, I'm ready for new hardware mostly so that we get new titles, right? Like it's like, I'm still enjoying my time with Switch when I'm playing it. This year I've played it less than I have any other year since launch, but I think that has more to do with the software coming out not being as compelling to me, and me having less money to spend on taking a risk on a game I'm not maybe the most interested in, like things like that, If
I look now, I think the only game I've played on the Switch this year is Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. It's the only game I played on my Switch this year. And I'm talking like across all games. It's not like new games. I'm talking like I've only turned on my Switch to play that game, but I've kept it around. I've never got rid of it. In fact, I got the Nitro Deck Plus specifically so that when the games do come out, like Xenoblade Chronicles X Remastered and Metroid Prime 4, which are both touted for Switch, I'm going to play them in a way that I feel most comfortable. And this is for a system I haven't played that much this year. I'm still out there getting the accessories, preparing myself for the games that I do want to play.
And that's the thing, right? It's like I think it has less to do with like necessarily being like, oh, like I'm totally over this hardware because it's no longer a good experience, as much as just like, well, we did everything, right? Like we did the 3D Mario, we did the 2D Mario, it's like obviously Metroid is going to be kind of the last big swing, but it's at this point it's kind of like the new hardware means we start getting the next generation of those things, and we get to kind of start the cycle all over again. And I think that's what most of the active Nintendo Switch fans are like so eager for at this point, is just for things to feel fresh again,
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, I've never like you say, even it's not like I'm done with the Switch, or that I'm like, I want there to be new hardware, because I think the current Switch is too weak. And I do think that Zelda, the frame rate was a bit choppy, and that was frustrating at the beginning. I sort of got over it, but I'm not like, what's the point of them releasing games for this thing? Because there's still a lot of life in it. Metroid Prime Remastered proved that last year. I'm sure Metroid Prime 4 is going to look just as good. Xenoblade Chronicles X is going to look fantastic, and it's probably going to run pretty well considering it's a Wii U title. And I get that that's will be a 10-year-old game by the time it comes out. But I'm not upset at the Switch or anything like that. I'm just like, if they release games, I'll play them there.
But that's the thing, is like, I think we all feel that it's like it's time for the next thing, and that's the biggest problem, I think, more than anything. Is that like you can feel Nintendo like holding cards to their chest because they're waiting for the next generation to start, and that they're trying to like kind of ride the end of the wave here. So like I am very interested too when you kind of consider that, like, to your point, there's no hesitance necessarily in the same way about a Nintendo Switch 2. There's a lot of optimism, a lot of excitement that's bubbling over. And I think there's also the stuff we just talked about in the Flip Screen Games podcast this week, that like handheld gaming is kind of having a renaissance right now. So I think the idea of them coming out and delivering kind of like, this new version of Switch that'll hopefully appeal to all the same people, and to your point, maybe even some new ones. I'm sure that's like exactly why you would think that there's maybe something to this rumor, this idea that like, rather than expecting to push, 2.74 million units, right, by the end of March 2017, like they did with the Switch, that like, they might be expecting to do something more like the PlayStation 5 did, right? Which sold 10 million in 250 days, which the Switch took 282 days to do that, right? So it's like just kind of accounting for the fact that there's going to be a considerable amount more demand this time around at launch, and making sure that you don't have to run into that situation where, people are buying scalped.
The issue with scalpers as well is that also affects Nintendo's reputation. People that want this product can't get it. They're seeing it sold for twice the price. The blame then falls solely on Nintendo. Why have they not made enough? And that's been an issue before, and that was an issue with the previous gen of consoles. They're not. I doubt they're expecting to sell that 7 million immediately. I don't think anyone should expect them to actually sell 2.5 times at launch. However, it does mean that anyone who wants them can have one, and then they'll sell through those naturally as things happen, as games come out. I do think there'll be more than the 2.474 million sold, because people already know what it is. There's no hesitation. They know what they're getting. And it looks like we're not having much of a Wii U situation here of like, what is it? Because looking at this sketch, which by the way is the first time I'm seeing this sketch. I've never seen this before or heard of this. But it looks like an upgraded version of what we're getting based on this very crudely drawn. Whoever drew this sketch had more time to do this, by the way. I don't know why they've gone for this. Like,
it's a very funny sketch. But
it
yeah,
is. But I get the idea of it. Like that.
We hadn't talked about it on the show. It's like a very it's emphasis on sketch. Like
it's like he was like the police were coming in the building. He had 2 seconds to draw this on a napkin before he was out the door.
This is
and then
the
they've
killer.
uploaded that exact thing. Yeah. But it looks like the same thing. It's the same. If you looked at this, just glanced at it, you go, that's a Nintendo Switch. But it's the details of like what looks like a bigger back, so that the dock doesn't rock and fall back and forth. Great.
Yeah.
The thing at the back, the what do you call it? Stand at the back, being like more of a U shape, so that it doesn't have to take up the whole hinge or whatever. Clever, like that stuff. Simple stuff like that. You would look at that and go, that's an upgraded Switch. That's the message there. There is no, what is this? Is it a tablet? Does it connect to the existing Wii U? It's just like, especially if they name it right as well. Like we said, just call it Switch 2.
I really hope that is what they end up doing, or like it doesn't, not literally this, but something like Super Nintendo Switch, where it's just like you can kind of clearly communicate that it's just like it's the Switch, but more, but better, right? Like whatever. But I do think the number is the way to go. I think definitely you want to build on that branding, and if you're worried about transitioning the audience, I think the best thing you can do is communicate like this is the next evolution of your relationship with your Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I think it was 2 years ago, it might not have even been, was it on Nintendo Noise where I said I never want to discuss a Switch Pro or Switch 2 rumor ever again?
Yeah, you've said that multiple times.
Probably every time I come on the show. But
yeah,
the stuff that's coming out at the moment, I feel more. I want more of this. I want to see more of this. I want to get myself excited in the run up to something we know is happening. And every time they do like a stream or something like that, or an announcement, and they have to clarify, like, we're not talking about the success to the Switch here. You're like, you mean that means that at some point they are, because that's not like otherwise why would they say that? We know it
is exciting to think that
at some point,
when they announce a direct and they don't say that, we're gonna be like, oh shit, does that mean now is this it? Is this the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can't wait.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting to think that it's like at this point it's so imminent, right? Like if the reports are to be believed, right? It's like a reveal in January. And then it's coming out, within the next like 3 months of that, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, this time next year we'll be talking about what the best game of the year was on the new console, right? Which is crazy.
How exciting! What is annoying for me now is that this came today, and I don't. And now
explain what this is for our audio listeners.
Sorry, the Nitro Deck Plus Pro, whatever they call it. I don't know. That I got.
Which is a thing that it's like a docking station that you plug your Switch into to have it.
It's like
be the size of a Steam Deck.
Yeah, it's like the Switch. Sorry, what's it called? The Split Pad Pro sort of size controllers, but it's one unit you put in, and it's directly USB-C plugged in, and it doesn't use the Joy-Con rails, and it's got Hall effect sticks, and it's got extra buttons and stuff, and it gives you like the size and feeling of a Steam Deck, and that's I had the original one recently, and I played Zelda on that, but I was just annoyed by the placement of the stick, so I upgraded to this one, But now I'm wondering if I've made a mistake here, because by the time the games I want to play come out, are they going to be on the new hardware? And am I also going to be more tempted by the new hardware than this? Am I ever going to use this? Is the big question.
It's a good question. Maybe the new hardware will magically fit.
That would be nice if the Switch actual unit is exactly the same. That would be fine. That would be cool.
That would be good.
What are the chances of that? Eh?
I guess we'll have to hope for your sake that pans out.
Yes, I hope and I pray.
But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Steve Stumpy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, Ty the Dude, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go check out those sister shows, the Flip Screen Games podcast or the Steam Deck podcast, for our conversations on what's going on in the world of gaming outside of Nintendo, go and check them out. You'll enjoy them. That's our guarantee. It's the Flip Screen Games seal of approval, brought to you by Max. So go check those out. Head over to flipscreen.games, where you can get involved in the community. You can come and chat between episodes. You can write in questions to the show. You can let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Whatever you want to do, however you want to get in touch, that's the way to do it. Flipscreen.games. Head over there. Get involved. So, we got a update to the some of the patent designs for the Nintendo Switch 2's Joy-Con. There was a previous version of this that was reported on, I think originally by IGN, a couple of weeks ago, and this is kind of just like another image that gives a little bit more of an idea of like some of the specifics of like the top of the controller. And we're looking at a design that has some modular components, and the kind of speculation that's coming from this is that this should have improved stability and a better time with like repairs and like, you know, addressing drift as a problem, because rather than being, you know, when that one piece is faulty on your drifting Joy-Con, the entire thing needs to be replaced. So because this is like made up of a bunch of smaller parts, the kind of you know, I guess thing we can extrapolate from that is that it should be more durable on its own. So like things like Joy-Con drift should be, you know, less likely in the first place, and when it does happen, it is maybe something that'll be easier for you to fix on your own.
Yeah, I like the sound of, I fucking hate what do you call it? Concepts or whatever you call these things.
Like patent designs?
Patent images, because I have no fucking idea what this means. However, I do like I get it, you know, it's like, it's almost like, do you know what this reminds me of is the new 3DS XL that had the maybe it was just actually all the 3DS I think had it, the round pad, you know, that was like the C6. This sort of reminds me of that, the way it's fatter at the bottom. And I'd imagine that would feel more like a stick, but
it does look a little wider and less like it's like a raised, like almost like the kind of like the GameCube stick is also sort of like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like what you're looking at here, right, is like, and you know, this is good for the audio listener. It's like we have like the, you know, like piece of metal, right? Like the like, I guess like probably the circuit board in the controller that like the actual nub is connected down to, and rather than being in like one piece like the Joy-Con is, you have like this nub with that's getting screwed down into another piece on top, and then it has like what looks like a Hall-Fax stick maybe underneath there.
Yeah, so it looks like it's sandwiched between this middle layer that I guess it means you only need to either take the top out or take the bottom out. I'm not sure. That top layer actually could be just the front of the controller, the front of the Joy-Con.
Yeah,
you know, like
I mean, I think that
plating here.
I think that is what you're looking at, and I think to your point, right? Like there's the 3 screws on top. So to me, I'm looking at this, and it looks like you'd be able to, without taking the entire thing apart, unscrew it, take the top off, and then unscrew the top and replace that stick, or maybe, you know, make some adjustment to it or whatever if there's something wrong with it, rather than like what you have to do now, which is take the entire thing out and replace that entire part, you know? So I do think this would make like home repairs much easier, rather than every time you have that problem you need to send it into Nintendo or whatever.
Are you thinking these are going to be proprietary screws, or do you think this is going to be something that anyone will be able to sort of, take it off if they need to and repair it if they need to?
I don't know. I mean, it's 50-50, I would guess, because like they obviously that was kind of the case with the switch screws, but like I could see them wanting to change that this time around because it was such a problem the first time. But it's also like they could have changed the screws on that model for later models if that was a thing that they were concerned with. So it's like, I don't know. I could see that being a change that they make in the name of like making downplaying the issue of drift if it comes up again and being like, oh well, it's it's cheaper solution, it's easier now, it's this, it's that, whatever.
Yeah. Less class action lawsuits.
Exactly. But Nintendo's gonna Nintendo, so I would never put it past them to use a weird proprietary thing to limit people's ability to do exactly that.
Yep, I don't know necessarily, because patents don't necessarily point to anything really. Sometimes do they as well? So it's one of those
No.
things that it's like, yeah, like in an ideal world, this is it. But Sony held on to that, holding on to that patent for, what is it? An advert comes up and you interact with it with your voice to make the advert go away. And
Yeah.
they made that patent, and they've held on to that and not touched it. And that means no one else can do it, and that's good. And I wonder if this is just like, we got this idea for what we could do, but we don't want, other people. The Lenovo Legion Go has a removal controller with a stick, and just like the Switch, maybe they're like, we need to have this so that no one else does it, and then I don't know.
It's 50-50 with them because it's like, obviously some of these things are going to end up being the features that we end up seeing, and it's, I think the only reason I, put more stock in something like this, like as you said, is that it's like we know how close we are to a release, right, of a console. Yeah. And it looks like, I think this is one of those situations where like if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's probably the Switch 2 controller. But that's, yeah, I mean, to your point, the idea that it'll be like maybe slightly different, that like the nub we're looking at is not going to actually be that shape or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's always, I think, in the cards, right?
Yeah. I mean, cool that they're thinking about this. Cool that they're obviously thinking about how can we make the Joy-Con better. No doubt we're going to get a whole new set of like thoroughly improved. Maybe they'll take out some of the features that are unnecessary, like all of these things that to really work on giving us a new Joy-Con. Whether or not it will be modular, you take it apart, all that stuff for us, the consumer, or whether it's just like an easy manufacturing process, or like you say, an easier way to improve the stability of it and reduce drift and things like that. Good.
Yeah, and you got to imagine that, to your point, that's something that they are actively looking to do this time around, just because of the simple fact that it ended up being such a point of contention, the class action lawsuit, all that stuff, right? It's like they want to minimize, any of those kinks that are going to get in the way of just the thing being an unmitigated success. Not that Joy-Con drift was ultimately a problem, obviously. We talked earlier about how the Switch is like, on track to be the best-selling console of all time. But yeah, if you can, I think, remove that problem as much as possible so that when it inevitably does pop up, it's not like, oh boy, Nintendo up to their old tricks again, right? It's just like every controller drifts, right? Like I've had 2 Xbox controllers drift on me, and none of my PlayStation controllers have drifted, but I know some people in the community have been like, my DualSense started drifting during year 1 of the PS5, right? You had that problem.
Both of my DualSenses. Well, yeah, both of them drifted in various ways, and one of them the touchpad stopped working. So at one point, I had to during God of War, I had to swap to a drifting one that had a touchpad that worked in order to do the only time you had to touch the touchpad in God of War Ragnarok. I was like,
that's extremely annoying. And that's the thing, right? Is like I never had that problem with a PlayStation controller. I have had it happen with 2 Xbox controllers this generation. Never had a problem with an Xbox controller ever before. And like with Switch, I didn't, for the first like 4 or 5 years, I didn't have Joy-Con drift, and then I had it happen in 3 sets. And it's just,
it's luck of the draw sometimes, isn't it? There's always going to be like a 10% fail rate is good. I think is that there? No, is it 1% fail? I can't remember. It's some number where it's like when you look at it as a percentage, okay, that doesn't sound like much. But you look at it as a number, you're talking in like the million, because of how many Switches have sold, right? So I don't tend to think of like, oh, my Joy-Cons drifted as like, oh, Joy-Cons are shit then. Granted, that is a large problem.
Yeah,
But
it's
let's say
just
the DualSense, for example. It's not the DualSense's shit. I've just, whoopsie, I got an earlier, less refined, accident, it happens.
yeah.
Oh, well,
You were
happens,
the unlucky one this time, and it's like it sucks not to minimize when it happens to somebody. I just had that happen with my PlayStation 5. It stopped turning on, and I'm really frustrated by that. But that doesn't, I'm in a small percentage of the overall group who had that unlucky thing happen. It's a bummer.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
I'm looking at do you remember that there was a model that leaked? The rumor of the prototype images of the Switch 2 came out. It was like a 3D model, and
Yes.
granted, we never had any proof of that either way. I don't think, but I am looking at these sticks, and they do appear to be slightly fatter.
Right, and that's like the whole thing is that it seems like it's a little bigger, a little chunkier, and it's like it seems like this is in line with that.
It doesn't have the U-shaped. That's the thing, is I'm comparing two leaks that could have come from two completely different points in production, or you don't know what's real or what's fake. It's nothing so far lines up, and it's one of those things that if you were trying to make a fake leak, surely you'd look at the leaks that have happened before and you try and make your stuff line up to try and give it some more credibility. But it's hard to say what is correct or what isn't correct, or I don't know. It just seems
that's why
impossible to call.
Ultimately, most of these things I think are just are interesting to look at in the context of like what we already know, and it's just or like what we think we know, right? And try to look for commonality, right? Rather than being too worried about any one of them being because it's like whether that number of 2.5 times that we talked about earlier, right? And maybe it's 1.5, maybe it's 3, whatever, right? But it's the idea that they are stockpiling to try and meet this demand is something that we know is happening, right? So it's does that make this piece make more sense or whatever, right? Is it somebody or to your point, is it somebody who's just looking to say things that make sense, right?
Yeah, you do see that sometimes where a leak comes out and then someone's like, oh well, here's another leak that also contains that information. It's like, okay, cool. Funny how that's just come out now. You've just brought that up now or something. Whereas I also feel like you sometimes get the opposite, where someone says a leak and then an actual credible leak comes out and you go, well, that actually mentions something. In fact, the entire Switch, the launch lineup for the Switch leaked a few days before, a few weeks before, because someone was like, oh, Has Been Heroes, ARMS, all this sort of stuff. People were like, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. And then when it actually came out,
hell, okay.
Yeah, okay, maybe we should, if only we'd known, not that it means anything or does anything for anyone, but
No, yeah, that's just I think the brand of copium that we're all deciding to engage with while we wait for the real stuff.
Yep, there's always something, isn't there? With copium, there's always going to be
here's this crumb.
yeah.
We're chasing breadcrumbs, but
yes.
I think that's ultimately the best you can do with these kind of things while we're in the run up. But if you guys want to let us know if you think that there's any veracity to the leaks we talked about today, are you expecting to be able to just go and grab yourself a Nintendo Switch off the shelves, or are you planning on pre-ordering day one to make sure that you're not in that hunt in the aftermath? Because I know for me, even if I know that there's we'll definitely have enough to meet demand, it's will you though? Let's get those pre-orders in, right? So yeah, if you're an anxious person like me, you can let us know by heading over to flipscreen.games and letting us know what you think about either of these rumors from today's show, or if you want to write in for a topic for next week's show. Of course, you can also find.
Watch out behind you.
Oh
Sorry.
my God, I know my cat's going surfing.
Sorry, I thought that was about to come down. Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's good. It's good. If you guys are not watching on YouTube, you're missing a show. Oh God, buddy. He's such a goof. He's been running all over the place today. So, again, if you want to get involved in the community, you want to check out the sister shows, you want to see all the other places that you can get us on the web, flipscreen.games, that's the website. I've been Pete. He's been Max. My cat's jumping up in the ceiling. We'll see you next week.